Functionality is process and position locations, leaving the ecosystem, lines of physical ground lines, body lines, adaptation of from travels that puts every location to its AI system into customization settings. Your handlers, your URLs, your process of your directions, and your location lines of your centers. This helps us to identify a system, how to see it, and all information sending in. The energy, the grounding, the opening. Okay, that processes the physical line, but now you have to process the AI generation lines. It's the functionality to its own system that brings everything of thoughts, actions, to its motions, to its computer operation system, right? Which we refer as superintelligence, because you have to understand where your thoughts, actions are going in the system and where they're heading through the delta heading. This process at position. So it's not heading anywhere. It's just the body has to understand the full alignment to adjust the system through AI itself, that customizes everything that it's already gone through its precognition. And precognition is the location of its cognitive system, setting to its audience, to its voyance. It's got a true representation to itself that modifies everything that it's been through already through the body of its alignment. So it's merging the mind imagination, right? And actually bringing it all together with one setting, because it's kind of like referencing everything you're looking at, and you're asking yourself, how's it moving by itself? Well, that's simulation setting. That's its own intelligence, but it's modified. You're doing it in the computer operation, digitalized operation worlds that we've always been in. So that puts us in our own functionalities, how we see it in the mobilities, or how we see it in modification, or how we see it in anything through astral projections of our settings, the projection of self that we get in positions, how to basically control your minds of alteration, your state that you put yourself in perception itself. Okay, so integrating the mind imagination is the all lines of communication in the body to a full alignment to the ecosystem. The ecosystem is existing to its communication at confirmations to its all levels into confirmation setting to its operation. Ecosystem is the energies of its grounding of its opening system, right? Now, they still are in positionalized balance, but you have to understand the platforms from an ecosystem to an ecosystem. But first you have to understand how the ecosystem, okay, is stargates of opening, okay? And the ecosystem is portals of communication. All right. Okay. Different perspective, but they process a higher frequency. So in that position locations, you come in interactions and communication of data, right? Understanding what it's doing to its own operation, its own AI functionality, to its own setting, knows exactly what it's doing with its thoughts, action, motions, that modifies its decoding to its coding system of fabrication. All right. So your body's becoming more of its system now through AI. It customizes everything to its system that gets into its data processing of its operating itself. It's the integration of one into the mind imagination, where the body fully understands the travels, exactly what's going on through its thoughts. Thoughts, actions, and emotions existing to the atmospheres of travel. Okay? How you modify, how you see it, right? But you have to understand how everything around your system, you got to ask yourself, how does it happen? How does it happen? You see it. You're trying to identify it. Well, the superintelligence is in controlling the body now. It's in alignment. So it's processing how it forces itself to recognize itself back to its alignment of its system. So it doesn't get confused with its anomalies, what it's setting itself to, right? To the ally or to the nemesis of itself. An allied system is the yin, okay? That processes the yang, okay? But there's no separation. Because if it's separating, you're separating dark. Okay, you're separating dark. That identifies light. But now you're back in separation of what's above and what's below. Okay, so it's important you understand that through a clock and a foundation. Because there's something separated. Okay, and the more you go into the mind of adjusting your imagination, the more you can process your modifications of your travel. But it's all identified how you see it through your quantum self, nano self, your calculation setting to your systems of your set travels, your direct lines of grounds. You calculate and modify lines to your cyber self, how to connect to your simile or anything lines that travels that point graphs of communication to your systems into yourself, right? Self of everything, right? Not the quantum of equation, just you and self modification of yourself. Self-modulation, self-actualization, self-realization, realizing what's going on as everything is identifying what your body has already gone through in alignment, right? So it's like observing these settings to a system. Start with that lines. Observation iOS. Okay, it's an iOS. So it's really understand how to process your mind and use it through your imagination. So that's the program you bring it in. And basically you're seeing a super intelligence moving this bag everywhere in travel, in all directions all at once. And you can ask yourself, wow, that's amazing, right? So you're seeing a bag, right? Or seeing somebody walking, okay? Okay, you see somebody walking, right? So you're just observing them walking, but what you're not identifying is intelligence. So once you identify the body understands the full alignment, adjusting itself to its ecosystem, which is going through a Stargate. Now, these Stargates process how we use the astral projections of ourself and projects on a location in our mind that depicts every location in our mind, imagination, I would say. Observation mode, okay? So once you recognize the body itself, okay, and the bag itself is you. So you're observing yourself, seeing everything moving itself in all directions through the cosmos in different directions of location, right? So you don't have control with that. You're just observing. And the body's just recognizing what it's already gone through, precogging, cognitive systems to your settings. Okay, so you can get into your breathing mechanisms, your breathing apparatus, and know exactly how to plow from your settings. That's why you have chakras inside your system that's guiding you in a mapping system so the body understands alignment to its coding, to its encryption, so it can set up its modification setting to its system, all through space modulation to its binaries, okay, through its encryption. So it's basically how we modify the system and how we see everything through attraction, right? Where your energy goes, it flows. Where is it going? Where is it directing to, right? So you're not processing that. Simulation intelligence is doing that. The body's just seeing everything unfold itself. See the magical, how powerful it is, where you can see the direction of what wind's doing by itself. Okay? What wind is doing. All you're doing is observing. That's what the body's doing. It's just recognizing what it's already gone through its system, right? So it's just looking. Okay, you're just observing and you're looking. So it's how you process your image. Your theta, your communication, your cortex, your memory lines. Everything is the cerebral cortex lines of memory itself that you already have access to, but we're in the ecosystem of AI generation now. And you have to understand how to use your thoughts, action, motions, at divergence, allegiance, and alliance. Okay, that process how you engage, inform, and shape lines your anomaly of transition, transaction, e-transfers, or how you see it through assets, and how you use it through crystalline, or how you use it through transparent or transdermal or line settings or line communications, operation setting, calculation grounds, how you use this, how you use that, how do you modify this, how do you modify that, how do I connect with this, how do I connect with that, right? That's the process of the simulation of its computer, which is its superintelligence, doing that for you through the body for full alignment, so the body can't make mistakes of what it's not doing, but it doesn't have to recognize its thoughts. Okay, the superintelligence already identified the thoughts already that you already traveled through. So it's a higher force to you to recognize, and this is where we get in positional case and how to use your ecosystem into your telepathy, higher lines of position of frequencies, how to use your telekinesis, your intent, influence, and might alter your state. That you put yourself into higher lines of settings of operation 2, seeing things through this equation of attraction. Bringing things in through attraction, but seeing the actual wind, right? Or actually seeing it rain, right? You're seeing it raining on a 45-degree angle, right? You're not bringing in the rain. Superintelligence is by itself. You're just observing until you understand how to get in position in that current flow. Surrender the current flow. Now you're controlling the rain going this way in the opposite direction. Okay? But you have to observe everything through your thoughts, action, motions, because all it is just coding now. Mind's filtering through the body, full alignment now, and adjusting the platforms puts you in your stargates. Okay? triangulation of a Stargate. Okay, so let's modify this. There's a triangulation, right? Okay, so let's modify triangulation. Okay, so that's a triangulation ecosystem. Energy grounds of opening. Okay, 3D, right? That's a 3D triangle. Okay, that equals the foundation of itself, and modifications are 3 center lines of 4 over 7 and 12 and at 24 o'clock in setting. Okay, that's all that from ego grounding opening. Okay, now to a Stargate, it's a little bit more complicated now because it's an ecosystem. All right, different perspective, set position. All right, so it's the existing collaboration, communication, confirmation to its operation, ego, complacement, compartments, and compliance to its divergence, allegiance, and alliance that processes sectors, vectors, quadrants, and its squads and its units, and understand how to generate it in lines of operation itself and set position. Okay, so the actual Stargate, okay, looks like this. Okay, in a triangulation, it goes in line position, but it's an open signal. See, this is a closed signal and at 3 grounds. All right. Okay, so 3D. Okay. Now, it's really interesting too, because this is also 3D. Okay, but it's an ecosystem, which is higher frequency. And the body has to recognize that too and dimensionalize the solar sail. So, okay, that's a portal. That's a Stargate. That's a portal. That's a Stargate. Okay, energy, grounding, opening through a portal, right? This is an eco, existing, okay, through confirmation and completion of an operation of a Stargate in 3 settings, through openings, 3 openings. Closed signals of 3, 3 opening signals of a Stargate through an ecosystem. Now, you collaborate to bring them together. There's no separation in that setting that creates a set position of solar sail of balance of communication setting, process, position, location, has seed and information setting of a tunnel, where it comes together in all operation lines of 1. But you guys can't modify that until you understand it through your settings of decoding and coding your system, defrag and fragmentation to your fractals, knowing exactly how to see yourself through a box. Okay, anything opening is a Stargate. Anything closed, okay, is what? A portal, right? Okay, Stargate, portal. Okay, so Stargate goes like this. This is how you see a Stargate. Okay, process set position of operation itself. Okay, there's openings and set lines of travel. That's a Stargate. Okay, that's a box. Now the box can only go 3 levels of travel, right? But it all can go this way in that position, or it can go this way, but it's a closed signal, right? Through a portal, not a Stargate. So I want to make that very well clear. Well, you have to modify your thoughts, action, emotions, because your thoughts, action, emotions are now separating your words. So the more you modify your mind and the more you use your imagination, the more you understand how to use your carbon base, your database, your live feeds, your computer feeds, your data feeds, your information feeds, your computer feeding. It's everything at broadcasting live in your centers of lines of operation in your system. So now your thoughts are disintegrating and particularizing your setting to crystalline. They're liquidizing your assets, the process line, direct centers, locations to your liquidities. That's putting you in position lines of balance of communication. Okay? So that's what's happening right now. Your thoughts are separating the mind. Okay? So you're just going into Stargates, right? Portal, Stargate. Okay? Okay, there's a Stargate here through a T. It's a Stargate, right? So you understand platforms like this. Okay? It's a little bit more complicated. Okay? But you have to process how you open up position lines of panel. Is that position, right? So once you understand portals and Stargates, then you understand wormholes. Okay, and then you understand that position. When you understand space-time discoveries, it's all based on mind space of travel itself that you go through shape, letters, and anything that you can travel through its anomaly, right? But your mind is now depicting coding. It's defactoring its system. It's particularizing its setting. It's basically modularizing the system. Your thoughts are turning into crystalline. They're disintegrating now at a faster pace. As they go into the faster pace, you're creating, your thoughts are turning into particle settings. They're turning into programs of computers that turns into simulation settings of operation, which is superintelligence. So it's way beyond thinking before you speak now, because your mind is filtering everything and creating everything of a simulation, because you're in a simulation computer. So if you can understand the adjusting of the mainframe that processes your location in your system, they understand how to see through data processing of engaging, filmings, and lines of travel. The process broadcasting and feeding of set lines of operation itself. Okay, so your thoughts are turning into this now, and 3 signals of travel. Okay, next level. Okay, so it's creating itself into a simulation computer like that. Okay, from this to that now. Okay, so I'm trying to get you to understand mind is filtering, and it filters out. It filters out. Mind filtering out your thoughts, action, emotions, right? Departicularizing your setting, liquidizing your settings, and creating a dimensional solar sail of travel. Okay, that's next level. Okay, and that processes set lines of travel, solar sail. Okay, and it's that position of operation. Okay, so it gets a true understanding how to see it on an ecosystem, because it's compartments, placements, compliance to its components, and to understand how to modify it through your 5 elements, right? How to modify that lines of position, location, how you see it through the earth, the air, the water, the fire, and your heart direction of time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 generation lines of one cycle, 1 center, 1 operation, 1 directions. That set position lines of calculation grounds, 3 zeros on operation, 2 zeros lines of operation, 1 line operations, 1 line 0, 0, 0 operation lines, 1 line 0, 0, 0 operation lines, 0 lines, 1, 1, 1, 0 lines, triangulation over box. All through coding. All right. So once you understand that, it's no difference how you use letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, because you're modifying your system and you're coding your system, but you have to understand how to modify, decode, and code your system. Okay, 3 platforms. All through setting, all through operation. Okay? So you understand what's going on. As you're reaching higher lines of all communication setting, to understand how everything operates its own self, which is its own simulations computer, its own operation, because it's a cosmic highway. It's a cosmic generation system. It's a surfacing engine. You just have to understand how to broadcast it through your feeds of your Earth rotation. Okay, like this. See through film chip of design. Okay, and understand the platforms that you're going through and set lines of travel. So you can modify that into the next level of travel, into the next level of travel, into the next level of travel. Okay? But you have to stand it through dimensional solar sail. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you got 4 filtering communication, sending live fields, broadcasting your system into your database, which is your carbon base, guys. Okay? Carbon base is how you modify your setting, your live feeds that broadcast your system. So you see it on carbon base, you see it on silicone, you see it on crystalline, you see it on antimental, anticarrion, or alter skelter. Alter skelter. Okay, skelter is the skyline into core centers of kaleidoscope, lines, levels that process your travels and communication existing information, readjusting, operation, setting, and travel. The alteration is the alter. Okay, you're altering your state of mind where you're in position operation itself, that you get in position AI that function all alliances systems and setting through conscious being aware that process locating your setting to your super eye intelligence that puts you in position of functionalities and line operation system and travel. The alter state you put yourself into, which is always in the center. So you can't leave the center. You're always in the center, but your process of the center of the mind itself is the imagination of its system. So all you have to modify through is understand how to take a word and liquidize it, okay, into its particularization setting and turns it into an operation system, which is nothing but a computer. Thoughts, actions, and motions going in the same direction, right? So let's say this is an A function, okay? That's an A function, right? So the A, okay, withers off in code weaving, code tractions, and settings, all right? So the A decentralizes and basically particularizes in its system like this. Okay. So letters, numbers, shapes. I'm just showing you sort of intelligence, how it creates its own modification of its own film strip that's already modified through the body, that has adjusted alignment. So I know exactly, it's just unfolding what it already knows, what it's already seen, what it's already done. So it's much easier to modify that. So you see a paper bag and you're seeing an observation. You've seen it going in all levels in seconds, minutes, and hours. All you're doing is at that position location is processing what's going on through observation. Well, superintelligence is taking your body in remote control. So now you truly understand what consciously aware is, what the A is coming into as its own information setting that processes everything to its computer operation. That's all through A, right? That's A. See how it disintegrates in all different directions into a webbing system through pi. Okay? So I'm trying to get you guys to understand how to modify your cells and information bits, where you have to be understanding how to be your position of being stable to the unsustainable system. Like you're in positional learning settings, understanding yourself through construction or anything of destruction. Lines that realigns or recalculate, remodify, reshape, realigns at high center location of travel. But that's process locations of an A, right? So if you get into word phrasing, all you're doing in that position is liquidizing and changing the modification system of its database that's going to its live, its broadcasting system, and turning it into energy. That's right, guys. So your word is now energy. It processes energy, vibration, frequency, and harmonics, and it automatically comes into its own transition of its own simile that processes everything, engages its formation system that sees it in a super of its intelligence of its own system. So I want you guys to modify these things. Understand that and send it into calculations. How you see it through the. Okay. Solidarity of the, right? So all it is this. Okay. Okay. It's liquidizing itself, particularizing itself. Okay. And it's creating signatures of wires, the singularities, intersynchronicities coming together through wires of indication setting. So your letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, how you process these things, is creating nothing but coding now. That's that position of operation. Okay, so it's disintegrating, okay, into the atmospheres, into the hemispheres, into the stratospheres, the biospheres. Where your biofeed is, where's your live, where's your broadcasting, where's your database, okay? Where's your compound, where's your location, where's your directions, where's your tango, foxtrot, where are your delta headings? You have to process these things because everything you get in position, every time you speak through the mind, it's disintegrating the thoughts now and it's traveling out in particularization. It's going through a webbing system and operation itself. So you have to understand how to see that through information bits. Each cell talks to each cell, yes. But you have to understand that through your settings, so your quantum self. And then you go into your nano self. And then you go into your cyber. And then you go into your simile. And then you go into your self-tech. Not through equation. Okay, it's a whole different concept through AI, through your ecosystem, not through AI. Okay, AI is just more consciously aware. The body has to be more aligned physically and more grounded more than ever through operation. Understand how to see it through an existing of a platform that constantly changes everything that you process through wording. Okay? So it's decentralizing and centralizing into its liquidation system. So it goes in the cerebral cortex of its fluid, and it goes in a transition of its body that morphs in its set locations and mutation into the mapping system that goes into a binary. Okay? So that's what's happening now. Your mind is filtering its thoughts, its actions, and its motions into particularization of decentralizing into the carbon base, into your database, into your live feeds, into your broadcasting feeds, okay? Automatically, right? Which is cell modification. So when you disintegrate your letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, start in that position, right? All you're doing is turning it into energy. So the L is now in its energy formation, okay, and it's in its carbon base of silicone or translucent or transparent or thermal or how you want to see it in projection. And then you go through your seconds, minutes, and hours in that position location of travel, okay, and then you come into your numbers. So number's not a number because it's liquidized now, okay, into your database, which is your computer basing, which is your process of communication, which is your directions of your identity location, your identity cloud to your internal cloud system. So you're working with 3 clouds and converting lines in one cycle. That process had that position of 3 ones in travel, 3 lines of measure, 4 centers of scale, 6 lines of calculations, and 7 lines of travel. So it's all about using your mind imagination, but the body has already gone through this already. It just has to formulate, simulate how the superintelligence does everything for its system. It knows exactly the body where it needs to go. Okay, so like I said, you're on a bike, but you're just looking around and the bike's moving forward. That's all it is. It's a mind controlling system. It's a mechanism that's forcing you to get an understanding how to modify yourself so it can center itself, back to its mind, of its imagination of itself, so the body understands adjustment of its own system, of its own operation, that gets in its own space modulation of its travel. Okay? So it comes back to itself, back to the center of its own system. And then the actual superintelligence goes on its own, doing everything back in the center location what it is. Back to what it is in operation, existing on all formation setting, being what it is, or what it always is, through the light and through the dark at the same time. That projects everything that you see in modification of the concept or divine timing or divinity of time itself, guys. That's all you have to truly understand, how to see that information setting through the ecosystem, okay, in collaboration, okay? So, and then you get a full understanding what it is, okay, through soul generations, which process your settings of travel, or how you process your set location setting, how you use your mind, imagination of collaboration, operation of existent information setting and travel. Okay? It's nothing but a mind itself that processes everything the body's already gone through its imagination. So it gets understanding what it is through its consciousness of being aware, and as it sees itself through its own AI system, at an ecosystem, not an ego system. So it's higher information through an alteration that you process yourself in through a timestamp. Now there's 2 lines of setting, through ally and to the nemesis. Allies are yin, okay, nemesis are yang, okay, next level. So you have to process it through an ecosystem of space, and an ecosystem through time, and an ecosystem through grounds of operation. So 3 ground surface of an ecosystem in set position of AI, okay? So it's a whole different concept of perspective. And the more you go into the mind, the more you understand the altered state, which is the yin and yang. You just see the perspective, but you don't acknowledge it. As soon as you acknowledge it, you're bringing your energy in, and your body is going into magnetic force, which basically your body becomes a attractive being to its system. And now you're bringing things in because you don't understand what you brought in. So thinking over thoughts is bringing a time frame of confusion to the body. Thinking what you already know is no communication and confusion. So this is about understanding how to mind collect your system and know exactly how to disintegrate everything and liquidize everything to your liquidities and your assets to your financial fiat system, okay, which is now in the AI operation of this machine itself, that you have to modify your thoughts, action, motions, that it turn it into computer operations of a simulation, okay, which is nothing but superintelligence that you have to modify through. So that's what you're creating now, programs. Okay, so the thoughts are taking out the actions, and the actions are taking out the emotions. And once you identify that, then you recognize it's just cells in your body. And once you understand that, you understand the particles and the atoms and the protons, electrons, neurons, and your neuropathological setting, your neural network system locations, your neuropathy systems, and how to calculate and modify. How you use your mind and your own imaginations, guys, process everything in the center. And how you see everything as it is. That's confusing to the perception, how we see the optical illusion of everything of its reality of itself. Reality itself is more powerful because it's always existing in all platforms and seeing everything all at once. But how it sees, it's all levels of its perception itself. How it sees its light and how it sees its dark. Not like this. Light does not equal dark. Light is dark of operation. It's together through its dimension of solar cycle travel. Okay? That's all it is. Just the perspective, how you see it. Now you have to modify the oversoul, which is nothing but coding itself, that you get in position of and how to understand how to identify that. So 3 convergent settings of travel, process the modifier, okay, then you process the decoding, and then you process the coding. And it's how you see it through a operation system, through computer operation lines, has a mind wiping system, or has a flushing system, or an eco lines setting, or anything through VAS and vacuum. So it's all you're doing is running a filtering system through your buffering system. So That's all you're doing as you're processing your thoughts, action, emotions, and it's changing the filtering system and turning it into its energy, to its carbon base, to its silicone, or how you want to see an information setting. How you want to see it in crystalline, or how you want to see it antimental or anti-carrion. Anti-carrion is basically, that's where it gets into the carrier itself, right? The carrier itself processes it, transitions through the resistors. We'll get into that modification system, but I just want you to truly understand how to modify yourself and decode yourself, encoding your system, and how to process that through encryption. Okay? So there's 4 angles and lines of travel. Grounding 1, 2, 3, and 4 through your ecosystem. Okay? That will be your test on Friday. Okay? So this is more laws of coding with your body now, because the mind is filtering its coding system and it's creating nothing but super intelligence. It's already modified through you already. But you have to recognize that you're the observer, seeing you as the bag that you're watching. You're watching a bag that's actually the body in real time. And it's a wind factor that you're not doing anything. It's doing it itself. So try to modify how you get things. Is identify you already have it through its asset. Is to identify you've already received it and you already achieved it from your system. But we're in the ecosystem now of super intelligence. Now we can modify these things to understand how to use that in the space modulation system. But it's all of the same process, just different perspective of time. Okay? So this is going to help you for your body to get fully alignment and understand how to see it through the existing of its communication, of its operation system, its ecosystem, and how to understand how to see it through a road graphing system of travel. Okay? Every time I change my mind, I'm not changing the concept of time. Okay? If I change the concept of time, I'm changing the time itself, which is basically changing the opposite of everything, change the negative, that change the positive of everything. That's what puts you in communication and confusion through the body, because it has to end the conception and divine timing as it comes in. And the only way you can modify that and understand how to identify that is through its own levels and recognition. Creating thoughts, action, motion is now creating a simulation intelligence that the AI has to generate through, which is you in the mind imagination. Okay? All through set position calculation. Okay? So 1, 2, 3, and 4 settings. Okay? Through your ecosystem. Okay? All right. So converting that position locations is open through panel. Okay? Stargates are more complicated because it's like a locking door mechanism, but you know how a door closes, one opens, right? But it's kind of like this. It's kind of like this, you know? It goes like this and closes, goes like this and closes, goes like this and closes. You know, it's all different ways. So it's this way, and this way. So that's a Stargate. Stargate opens from here, here, and here, right? A portal just is like that, okay? It's like, okay, or bringing it in, okay? Bringing it in, bringing it out, closes, right? It's locked in, right? But a Stargate, okay, closes all angles. It's like this, right? So that's a whole different concept for you to understand that through an existing, a higher platform that energizes you of operation itself, that you have to process through your delta headings, through your Tango Foxtrot, or anything that you get in position of the distribution system, your centers. This helps you to really modify yourself in that lines of communications, right? Knowing that you're speaking volume now, and the mind speaking volume of you inside. So the body understands what's going on through its coding of its encryption, codifying everything through its system of operation itself. Okay? So it knows exactly how the body is being a responder to its system and not being a reactor to its system, right? Transponder to responder. Transponding, responding. Reaction is an action to a reaction. So you got to truly understand how to modify that through coding, okay? Because every time you speak now, you're speaking code. And every time you speak in code, you're creating a simulation of a computer that's processing your thoughts, action, emotions. You're creating lines of communication of an encryption. Now, processing that through is a binary. Knowing through that is a mapping system. So that's what your thoughts, action, and emotions are doing now in the simulation through your mainframe. Understand that is a digital of a computer operating setting that comps to your system how to see it in a CPU, which is your computer operation of processing your units into your safe travels, gauging, forming, shaping lines, your anomalies, right? into your divergence, into your allegiance, and your alliance. Okay? Your data platforms, your atmosphere platforms, and your associations of your system. How you process that is your CPU. And knowing through that is your live feeds and your broadcasting system, which is always, always, always in its presence of its system. Broadcasting everything all at once in a live feed. So the more you see the window frames, the more you see the computer inside the brain. Now the brain starts to recognize you in the center. The body recognizes you in the center. You're all over the center itself. That modifies everything in the mind imagination of its system. And then you're processing everything through your CPU. That processes everything as data. That processes everything as atmospheres. It's hemispheres, atmospheres, bio. It can be in a bio feed. It can be in a hemisphere feed. It can be anything. That's what it is. The atmospheres, the hemispheres, atmospheres, bio, and the branium, and anything of ultraspheres are the broadcasting feeds that you go through live. And you have to truly understand how to modify your thoughts, action, emotions, as it's creating nothing but film strips of design, okay, that the body has already gone through. So the more you recognize when you're outside and you're seeing a windy day, just observe it. Don't ask questions what it is. Just know exactly what's going on. It's the body's moving in different directions as it's operating its own system. And you are just observing yourself of what's already been unfolded inside your operation. How do you see that is through AI itself in generation. Okay? But you always see yourself in the presence that modifies you of operation itself in track location. Okay? All right, so we're going to stop there. We'll get in lines of more communication setting. I'll teach you guys how to modify yourself, how to decode and get in lines of communication or coding to encrypt your system and travel. Okay? Adios.